Imagine you're on a plane. Both pilots suddenly collapse. A flight attendant runs into the cabin and asks if anyone knows how to land the plane. It's absurd. But a surprising number of people would think, for a split second, I could probably figure it out. Not because they've ever touched a cockpit, just because they don't realize how much they don't know about flying one. We do this constantly. Scroll the comments under any post about politics, nutrition, history, or money, and within minutes, you'll find people arguing with total confidence about things they have zero idea about. Everyone's done it at some point, myself included. In 1999, two Cornell psychologists, David Dunning and Justin Kruger, decided to test this. They gave people a series of tests on logic, grammar, and humor, then asked one question: how well do you think you did? The people who scored the worst consistently thought they'd done great. Not because they were lying, the researchers found that the same skills you need to be good at something are the skills you need to notice you're bad at it. Take those away, and confidence gets cheap. Today it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and once you know the name, you start spotting it everywhere. Here's the part that got me, though. More than 2,000 years before the paper was published, a man in Athens was already circling the same question, not in a lab, just by talking to people. His name was Socrates. Most people know him for one line, usually shortened to "I know that I know nothing." But that's not what makes his story interesting. What's interesting is that he never thought he was the smartest man in Athens. In fact, the whole thing started because someone else did. According to Plato's Apology, Socrates' friend Chaerephon once went to the oracle at Delphi, the closest thing the Greek world had to a final word on anything, and asked, "Is anyone wiser than Socrates?" The oracle said no. Most people would take that and never look back. Socrates couldn't. He figured the oracle had to be wrong, not because he had someone else in mind, but because he genuinely couldn't see what he'd done to deserve it. So he set out to prove it wrong, to find someone wiser than himself, or understand why he couldn't. He started with the politicians. So he asked simple questions. What is justice? What makes a good leader? The answers sounded solid, right up until he asked one more question, then another, and the certainty just came apart. Maybe he'd picked the wrong politicians, he thought. So he tried the poets, next people whose work half of Athens admired. Same pattern. Then he went to the craftsmen and finally found real expertise. But then the same problem showed up in a new shape. Because they were brilliant at one thing, most of them assumed they were brilliant at everything. Sound familiar? A great actor starts explaining the economy. A billionaire starts giving out medical advice. A star athlete takes on foreign policy. Psychologist Edward Thorndike gave this a name in 1920, the halo effect. Excel at one thing, and people assume you're just as trustworthy on everything else. Sometimes that holds up. Usually it doesn't. By now, Socrates had talked to politicians, poets, and craftsmen, three completely different worlds, and heard the same tune each time. So he stopped asking, "Who's wiser than me?" and started asking something else. What if the oracle never meant knowledge at all? Maybe wisdom isn't about how much you know. Maybe it's about knowing where that knowledge stops. In the Apology, he puts it plainly. I do not think I know what I do not know. One sentence, but in a city full of people who were sure of everything, it made him stand out. Eventually, it made him a target. By this point, Socrates wasn't known as a teacher or a politician. He was just the man who asked the questions nobody wanted to answer. Walk through Athens, and you'd likely find a small crowd around him, a politician or teacher at the center, sounding confident, until a few of Socrates' questions later, the confidence was gone. Young Athenians started tagging along. Some people found it funny. Others found it humiliating. And Athens wasn't in a forgiving mood. The Peloponnesian War had just ended. Democracy had barely stabilized. And a man teaching kids to question authority didn't read as harmless to everyone. In 399 BCE, Socrates went on trial, charged with disrespecting the city's gods and corrupting the youth. That second charge makes more sense now. He wasn't telling kids to break the law, he was showing them that even the most respected people in Athens could be flat wrong. To a lot of Athenians, that idea alone was dangerous. A jury of roughly 500 citizens found him guilty and sentenced him to death. Days later, his friend Crito showed up in his cell with an escape plan already arranged. Guards bribed, route ready. All Socrates had to do was leave. He didn't. In the Crito, Plato has him ask a simple question back. If he'd spent his whole life arguing that laws matter, what would it say about him to break one the moment it became inconvenient? Agree with the decision or not, the man was consistent. According to the Phaedo, he spent his final hours talking with friends, then drank the hemlock. He died that day. The ideas didn't. Which brings us back to the plane, and that little voice that says, I could probably figure it out. In 1999, Dunning and Kruger put a name on one slice of that instinct. Socrates had been clocking it 2,000 years earlier, one conversation at a time. So, did Socrates know anything? By his own account, no. He never claimed to have the answers. He just made sure he never pretended to. Maybe that's what the oracle actually saw. Not a man who knew everything, but one who knew exactly where his knowledge ran out.